Hello, namaste, assalamu alaikum, welcome to For Us. We give the latest news, and today we're going to look at our second team in this series of all-time 11s, and it is England. Surprise, surprise, we talked about Australia and then the Ashes counterpart. England is who we're going to talk about. This particular video, I'm going to look at England's all-time 11. Now, there are going to be players from the last 30 years. There's going to be a high chance they won't be included. But I'm going to talk about everyone, and then I'm going to give you my interpretation at the end of it, and then I will do a live stream later this week to kind of go through the all-time 11 and then the current Test 11. Let's get down to it. First off, the openers. One name just comes to mind. It's Alistair Cook. This guy made his Test debut in 2006. And turns out he becomes the highest scorer ever in Test cricket for England. Alistair Cook has over 12,000 runs. Yes, at an average of 45 with 33 centuries to his name. But what he did for England is something similar to what James Anderson did for England around the same period. Both of them just made England such a formidable side. So Alistair Cook has to be considered similar to how Australia's team was so difficult to decide. England's team is probably as difficult or maybe even more difficult, all right? There's this absolute genius called W.G. Grace. He cannot be considered in the best Test 11. If it was a first-class 11, I'd put him in. Dude played 800 first-class games, scored over 60,000 runs, whatever it was. A lot of runs, okay? And over 2,000 wickets in first class. But in Test cricket, he wasn't as good. But W.G. Grace was an absolute beast. Okay, we talk about Jack Hobbs. Jack Hobbs, for me, is a sure shot for this side. And because Jack Hobbs is in it, I think Herbert Sutcliffe obviously makes the side. These two were England's opening pair for quite a long time. And they complemented each other very well. Jack Hobbs scored 5,410 runs at an average of above 55, while Herbert Sutcliffe scored over 4,500 runs at an average of about 60. Both of these guys were run-making savants, all right? Yes, they played on uncovered pitches, which means it was harder for them to bat. Even if I disregard that fact, I would have at least one of them in my side. But Graham Gooch, he's got almost 9,000 Test runs as well. Okay, he's been very important to England, but I don't think he's in the discussion. He is in there somewhere, but he's not in the top three if I was considering, openers for England. The funny thing is, I haven't even included someone like Geoffrey Boycott. The dude scored over 8,000 runs, played so many games, made so many hundreds. He was known as the guy who would come out to bat and he would just stop right there. He was, in my opinion, the original Wall, okay? Prior to Rahul Dravid, he would just not get out and he'd score big. And he'd just stay at the crease all the time. He'd just be that very slow, very laborious. But when he'd hit the ball, it would be sweet, man. Honestly. Averaged almost 48 in tests. So you'd consider this guy to be an obvious choice. Because of players like Jack Hobbs, Herbert Sutcliffe, Alistair Cook even, right? Geoffrey Boycott, for me, will find it difficult to get in the side. We go down to the middle order. And the thing is, some of these players have opened. Some of these players have been mainstays in the middle order. But whatever happens, I can't look past Sir Len Hutton at number 3. Almost 80 tests, 6,971 runs, an average of 56, with a highest score of 364. And he held that record as the highest scorer in an innings for about 20 years till Sir Garfield Sobers took over with his 365 against Pakistan. So honestly, Len Hutton is just like an absolute champion. And for me, he might just be my captain. Then you have Wally Hammond, who scored, over 7,200 runs at an average of 58, coming in super hot into that middle order. And Wally Hammond was considered, one of the best batsmen of that era. Second to Sir Don Bradman. He had a conversion rate of 48%, 2200s, 2450s, and was just a fantastic timer of the ball. This guy made 7 double hundreds. Are you kidding me? That's a huge feat. You have the option of potentially David Gower, but for me, David Gower was slightly selfish as a player. He was very good, very talented, very flamboyant as well, stroked the ball brilliantly, but because of the greatness that is present in this potential middle order, I don't see David Gower anywhere near this. You've got players like Dennis Compton, who is considered someone who was akin to a Kevin Pietersen, but of his time, all right? He was a genius from the beginning. I think he actually played and represented Arsenal as well, but that's football. But this guy was multi-talented, was a fantastic stroke maker, scored over 5,800 runs, 1,700s, right? But the way he actually bossed the Australians, I think it was the 1948 Ashes, where England got destroyed, but this guy was averaging about 50. So I think he is someone who could potentially be put in there. But I mentioned a name. I mentioned Kevin Pietersen. Dude, he was absolutely brilliant as well. He didn't play as long as I would have liked. He played over 100 tests though, okay? Scored brilliantly, changed the way batting is seen nowadays around the world, okay? A lot of people might disagree with, including Kevin Pietersen in this side, but I would definitely consider him in this middle order. Really better than some of the greats from the last 30, 35 years for England. And then we come to my last piece of the puzzle for this middle order. Again, I don't know who will be in this side, but these are just players that need to be considered. Ken Barrington. He's the only guy, barring Sir Don Bradman and Steve Smith, to average as high as he does after scoring above 6,000 runs. He's such a run machine, it's not even funny. Especially against the Australians, where he averaged above 60. He was an accumulator. He would make runs and keep churning away over and over again. You consider the way he's revered playing against Australia overseas, right? He's got brilliant stats, but he averaged 50 at home as well, which means he was good at either place. He would make a great partner if Dennis Compton was in the side, because Compton has those free-flowing strokes around the ground, and then you have the accumulator who makes runs and just doesn't want to stop. That would be a good combination. And last but not least, I gotta mention the guy, just a mention, Joe Root, brilliant batsman. If he keeps doing what he's doing, maybe in 10 years' time I could say he might be in the England all-time 11. Right now though, sorry to say, he doesn't make it. Now if we come down to the wicketkeepers and the all-rounders, okay? Wicketkeeper-wise, there's only two names, and I could be wrong, but these are the only two names I can consider. Alan Knott and Alex Stewart. Alan Knott, what an absolute beast with the gloves. And he could bat. He wasn't just a mug with a bat either. He had an average of a little over 30, but he provided a very solid base at number 7 or number 8 for England. This guy has the most dismissals by a keeper for England ever. 269 if I'm not wrong. And then third on that list is Alex Stewart, who has 241, I believe, out of which 227 have been caught behinds. He was absolutely crucial for England winning any games during the 90s and early 2000s. But the big plus for someone like Alex Stewart is his batting. He had 8,463 runs at an average of just shy of 40, batting anywhere between opening and number 6, or maybe even 7 sometimes, but mostly anywhere in that. So he's one of those players you could fit anywhere in that batting lineup, and he would just come in and make runs. He was so good against all types of bowling, be it spin, be it even reverse swing. Yes, he has a huge issue with the way certain players used to reverse swing the ball.
I'd pick it up, I'd look at it, look at one side, look at the other, smile, throw it back to whacker.
But he still played a lot better than a lot of other players, all right? And in terms of all-rounders, Ian Botham. Same thing I'm going to say about Ben Stokes that I did Joe Root. Give it 10 years. If he keeps doing what he's doing, right? Or let's just say 8 years for the sake of argument, then maybe Ben Stokes can be considered. But Ian Botham is Ian Botham definitely just fits in every way, shape, or form. Batsman of the highest status, or very close to that. Bowler of a very close to that status as well. So on top of that, he was a very good fielder, a safe pair of hands. 102 test matches spanning about 15 years. He had a batting average of, I think, around 33, 34, and a bowling average of about 28. Right? He had over 350 wickets, and scored in excess of 5,000 runs. So now if we come to the bowlers, just before I do, this is the biggest decision because England have not had spinners galore throughout their tenure as a professional cricket nation. Okay, they've had Laker, they've had Underwood, and then years later they had Graham Swann. Okay, barring that, it's very hard to consider any other spinners for England. Laker for me doesn't get it, but I think he did get a 10 for, or the first guy to get 10 for. Graham Swann would find it difficult to fit into the side as well. However, if I want Alex Stewart as my wicketkeeper, I'm happy with Graham Swann. But if I want Derek Underwood in the side, I might have to change Alex Stewart and bring in Alan Knott, because Alan Knott kept wickets to Underwood so well that it seems like no other keeper can actually sustain that type of skill behind the stumps for again while keeping to Underwood. So that's gonna be a tough choice depending on what you look at. But yeah, Derek Underwood, 297 wickets, 80 test matches, an average of about 25. Class bowler, absolute class. And yes, I talked about Graham Swann as well. He was good. He was very good. He was very helpful for England winning any test matches, especially between 2010 and 2015-16. But his career was quite short, even though he played a lot of matches. But his impact for England in that era was great. But in the grand scheme of things, I think Underwood was a better, and he gave you that left arm angle, which is always good to have. Now we get to the pace bowlers. So I'm going to name a few players. And you might think, oh, that's a straight shoot for the side. So you think of James Anderson, Stuart Broad nowadays as well. Darren Gough, maybe Jon Snow, okay? Maybe even Sidney Barnes, maybe Fred Truman, maybe Harold Larwood, maybe Brian Statham, maybe Frank Tyson, maybe Alec Bedzer, maybe Bob Willis. That's 8 bowlers I've named in there, and there's only 3 places maximum. Okay, it's a task and a half. In terms of the players I named, Fred Truman for me was one of the best pace bowlers for England all time. He had 307 wickets in 67 matches, had 3 10-fers, 17 5-fers. What him and Statham did together in the 50s and 60s was amazing for England. It's literally, if I had to compare it to something, I would have to compare it to Broad and Anderson. And I can't compare it to Larwood and Tyson, unfortunately. But Fred Truman was great with the ball. He was aggressive. He brought that kind of, oomph factor into the test side. You think of, Harold Larwood, as I said, in the Bodyline series where the captain of England told Larwood and the other English pace bowlers to try and negate the Australian batsmen by just bowling at their bodies, right? And he took 33 wickets at an average of just under 20. This guy was great, and he was so crucial to so many Ashes victories or Ashes games for England that people would consider him not being in the side as just blasphemous. Okay, James Anderson, first pace bowler to get over 600 test wickets, and he's still going. Look at this guy's longevity. He debuted in 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. He's still playing, still bowling 85 miles an hour. Okay, he's 37, 38 years old. He's taking wickets, and he got better in the latter 10, 11 years of his career rather than right at the beginning. He matured, and he can swing the ball. He can do every trick with the red ball that I can think of, especially from a swinging perspective, okay? James Anderson is absolutely top class. His partner in crime, Stuart Broad, has now got over 500 wickets. And Stuart Broad might actually overtake McGrath soon as well, becoming the second most successful pace bowler to take wickets in tests. So he's great too. Jon Snow. Imran Khan thought of Jon Snow as one of his idols when he was bowling, okay? So this guy was absolutely prolific. I mentioned Frank Tyson. I mentioned Sidney Barnes. I mentioned Alec Bedzer. It is so difficult to think about just 3 bowlers. And just on a point about Sidney Barnes, he played over 100 years ago. Not brilliant against Australia, but who cares at this point? He was just so important. I think rankings aren't that important, but he's the highest ranked bowler ever, if I'm not wrong, in ICC rankings. So there was something about him. Although he did take 189 wickets in 27 games, which is quite a brilliant record, I must say. Yes, pitches, all that, conditions taken into account, but he was very, very good too. And surprisingly, I haven't even talked about Bob Willis yet, but Bob Willis was an absolute beast with the ball. 325 wickets in 90 games. Very iconic bowler for England. So England, just like Australia, have had such a long cricketing history. It's hard to just pick a few players, but those are the ones that I really want to talk about. If I had to pick an 11, mine would go something like this: Jack Hobbs, Herbert Sutcliffe, Len Hutton, Wally Hammond, Ken Barrington, probably Ken Barrington. I'm thinking Kevin Pietersen, probably not, okay? If I'm not thinking Dennis Copton, not thinking Pietersen either. They just won't fit in my side. I've got Stewart, Botham, Truman, and then if I've got Underwood at 9, maybe I should replace Nott with Stewart. That's a tough call, but I know I'm going to have Underwood at 9. And then at 10, I've got James Anderson. And the last bowler, who's it going to be? Barnes? Tyson? Willis? Hat. Larwood. I'm going for Larwood. I'm just going to put Larwood in the side. I think he deserves to be there. So yeah, that's my team. Please let me know what your team is in the comments below. It would be my pleasure to read the comments, honestly. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like the content. Do join me on the live stream later this week. And yeah, until next time, please take care.